think it was really inspirational for me to take a case from a younger lawyer and be able to add value and get him 10 times the amount of the settlement because I just knew the stuff. I knew the medicine.
As a PI lawyer, it can be tempting to take all different types of cases, but it's only by becoming an expert in your niche that you can consistently unlock those big settlements.
Now, do I know about many other things? No. I'd like to say I'm good at tennis and basketball that I love, but I pretty much suck. I'm really good at this, about adding some value to cases that involve medicine that hasn't been looked at.
You're listening to Personal Injury Mastermind, the show where elite personal injury attorneys and leading edge marketers give you exclusive access to growth strategies for your firm. Jeremy Tissot has seen it all. He's been on the defense side and the plaintiff side. He's had high-profile clients and litigated cases in every county in California. I caught up with Jeremy to talk about how he transitioned to owning his own law firm, broke into the conference circuit, and how he became an expert on TBI. I'm your host, Chris Dreyer, founder and CEO of Rankings.io. We help elite personal injury attorneys dominate first-page rankings with search engine optimization. An important first step for any lawyer is to really understand the people around them. So let's get to know our guest. Here's Jeremy Tissot, president and founder of Tissot Law Firm.
You know, I had some idea, even when I was in law school, that I wanted to be an entertainment lawyer. Interestingly, I then worked for Warner Brothers as an intern, and I realized someone said to me, a staff attorney, because this is really boring stuff. And it was real transactional, and you don't get to meet actors and models and things like that right away. So, but when I was in law school, I did recognize, even though we had very little real training about being a trial lawyer. It was so much, it wasn't practical. I hope it's changed, but I did realize when I had an opportunity to speak in moot court, which is, again, it would have been better if there was more trial advocacy, but I did real well in that. I thought, well, maybe I had a partner whose father was a prominent DA and then judge, and he suggested to me that I should, really get into advocacy and probably would be a good trial lawyer. I really, at that point, didn't think about it because no one really taught me it in law school.
Right. That's pretty common. I hear different variations of law school where they don't prepare you for like the business side or like there's just so many skills with a trial attorney. I know we could really dive deep into body language and tonality and preparation and just all those things. It sounds like, from my research that like early on in your career, you really had an accelerated path, right? You were the youngest partner ever at a well-known defense firm, Callahan, McCune, and Willis. Tell me a little bit about that path. And at that time you were on the defense side.
Right. And it was kind of a little bit different than most defense firms, but what I came in and I wasn't one of these kids who had, and I see a lot of this now where they say, just start your own firm, right? I never really wanted to do that because I thought, look, I had never grown up with a lot of money. And by the time I got out of law school, I had worked since I was 16, maybe even earlier, had a paper out when I was 12. My father didn't do poorly, but he wanted me to work. And so I always had. And so I was so glad to get a job that during the time I had done pretty well in law school, but during the time of we were graduating, they always said it's a tight legal market, right? And so I was so glad. I clerked for them for a while and they offered me a job, and it really wasn't much money. They were a little tight, but they gave an opportunity that if you could bring some business in, that you would have a chance to elevate. And by the third or fourth year, I was making more than some partners, even though the partnership track would have been 6, 7, 8 years minimum. And so, yeah, I took off because I saw, look, people go to law school and they think it's just a ticket to, or write your ticket to a big salary. But as you know, it's really competitive out there. So I did start out on this trajectory, but, things changed and there were some bumps along the road.
So let's talk about that. Yeah, it's incredibly saturated, and we're going to talk about some of the things that you're doing for like thought leadership and original content and being an expert. And we're really going to dive into that, particularly the TBI space, some of those web jams, things like that. But let's take it back a step. So You were rainmaking, you were bringing in the revenue. So like early on, what was it, a relationship thing to kind of bring in some extra cases? Like what were some of the actions you were taking back then?
Yeah. So I think it's just a question of reinventing. So fortunately, the industry, I wasn't aware of what was going on in personal injury, but I'm one of the few people that, hate to have to admit this, age-wise, that I've seen the cycles a few times, the way it goes. And we're facing a cycle right now where we have some challenges to justice and our ability and some initiatives that may challenge us here in California. And so what we were seeing then was that the larger firms, like say the defense firms, a lot of people had to work for at coming out of law school. I didn't have the family money to start my own firm, and I drove a 10 or 12-year-old Nissan Sentra around the Pepperdine Law School campus, and people thought you went to Pepperdine, you were rich. I had part of a scholarship, but I was like, I didn't feel real good about myself. So some of the things, they change over time. And, I was able to, in terms of my trajectory, I was encouraged to go get business. And some of my colleagues then who had also gone to defense firms, they're like, I'd go out with them for drinks after work, and they'd be like, wow, your firm gives you that? Because most of them would give them like a salary, and then they would maybe bonus them for, to grind away and bill hours. But my firm recognized that insurance defense firms, outside firms, were a dying breed because of the fact that at that time, the insurance companies had figured out to go in-house. So instead of paying the outside firms, they were gonna hire those same lawyers and pay them a salary and not have to worry about these massive bills. And so they recognized we got to get into some other practice areas. And in fact, they did. And that's what allowed me to get into plaintiff law, because they let me actually take plaintiff cases that were not conflicted. And that's what I really wanted to do. I had a couple of good role models in that area. Some plaintiff lawyers that rented space from us. And I thought they were the coolest people because they had exciting stuff going on, and I was kind of billing. And I did get to try cases right away. I had the type of boss who said, you take the file, you go with it. And if it ends up going to trial, we're not going to pull you off it unless you screw something up along the way. And I didn't. So I tried more cases than people tried, because, they would say like most of these cases settle. And all of a sudden I found myself in 2 or 3 trials in the first couple of years. So that was cool.
That's amazing. And, most lawyers don't get those reps. They don't get to get that experience. And, specifically, you kind of, you forecasted, saw kind of where the law was going on the plaintiff side, and you had these relationships that you really built and developed. But I kind of wanted to ask, what skills did you learn as a defense attorney that really helped you on the plaintiff side that maybe the common personal injury law for attorney would really have or see?
Yeah, I think look, I don't like to pontificate to people about what they don't know, but I've realized even in the last few years, all the things that I need to have more depth of knowledge on. And I just think one of the things, first off, is just, I'm not saying everybody has to do this, but you're working for a firm. I happen to work for trial lawyers who just really, as people, they can be difficult. I'm not sure about their personal lives, but they were they were really good trial lawyers. And I learned a skill set from them. And they were going against like the biggest personal injury lawyers. And if you lose those cases, you're going to get fired. I mean, these are cases where we're getting paid hourly, and they were low rates, right? And we had an opportunity, we were given money by the insurance company to hire experts. But if you lose a case to one of these big boys who who they are, and it's a $30-40 million hit, you're out the door. And so anybody who thinks that this was just like, hey, you just go bill, I think it gives you experience. It gives you so much background. So, I always talk to people about that. And I think one of the ways we started, you were mentioning like TBI Med Legal or some of the other platforms I started speaking on after COVID. One of the first webinars we did was pulling back the curtain on what are the different stages in a case that a defense lawyer looks at the case. And so I had that information, and I can't see how that couldn't be valuable. So it's interesting, right?
Yeah, it's the interesting part that I liked hearing was like a lot of people are like focused on the quantitative, and I guess knowing the outcome of that you could be fired like really helps you focus on the end result of winning, and you look at things in a different perspective.
Right. And we knew, there was one lawyer, and this it's all about the culture too. One of the reasons I eventually had to leave, and I wish I had done it sooner, we'll talk about that later, was that yes, we were given opportunities to try cases, but I remember there was one younger partner there who was really good at the law and knew the civil procedure code. But, I'm like, if this woman walks into the court with who, it's going to be over for her because she didn't have that charm. She's not going to be able to handle that. And then it's going to wow the jury. And sure enough, it did. And, we had 2 or 3 people that could go into trial that were going to be able to tell the jury 0 on a case. And so I always look at it when I'm working on my plaintiff cases, 15 plus years of doing it. And, I got to the point where I was doing catastrophic case defense. I mean, I started out great. They give me the smaller files, and then it's the same. It's just a spectrum, right? So you're just doing the same thing.
Yeah. And let's talk about that. So you went out, you started your own firm. So how did that come about? You decided to kind of put your flag in the ground, so to speak, so you knew it was time and you had this confidence of the reps, the experience. So tell me a little bit about.
Well, it's a little more difficult than that. So I can't sugarcoat it. I had, as you pointed out from looking at my background, I had like this fast trajectory. Of course, whether it was defense or plaintiff, it happens. When you come out of law school, in my opinion, you have, if you're an ambitious and a go-getter, like every year counts, right? And so you're like, where do I need to be at this year? And I thought early I wanted to be a partner, or I wanted to have this level of revenue. I also want to build up my client base. I wanted trial experience. So every year I looked at myself. But when you get to like 5, 7, 8 years, it kind of becomes a blur. It's scary. And so I remember one of the reasons I stuck around was because I really liked the culture of the firm. And I think that's so important, whether you're plaintiff or defense. It has such an impact on you. We had this culture where when we win cases, we'd have a celebration. We'd have like the main guy would come up from the other office, and he was such a cool guy. He'd take us out. As a young lawyer, it was so cool to me, And I loved the camaraderie of it all. And they never had, it was not a lot of negativity. Well, eventually culture can change. And there was at least one partner that came in that was just out to kind of ruin everything. And unfortunately, where I was at, I was in a pretty comfortable place. I was earning a, pretty good salary, but more importantly, I had got a big cut of the clients I brought in. Plus I figured out a system to bill effectively, and was one of the top billers, and I worked my ass off, but it was a combination of things. It was hard to leave. I can't tell you it was easy. If I had done it at 2 or 3 years, I would have been used to a lower income. But once you're used to all these expenses in life, family and mortgage and all these things, it's hard to leave. And, a lot of these outfits today will encourage lawyers to just, open up your own practice. Well, I don't know. If you know something, do it. It was a struggle. It was a struggle to leave. I should have left earlier, maybe. And I didn't have an idea. I knew I was going to do plaintiff work, and I had mostly plaintiff cases that I was going to pursue. But I was really worried about my day-to-day income. Plaintiff work. Like I'm a conservative guy about that. I had a defense client. I had to take that with me. So I had all this weird imbalanced stuff. I got to make 20% to pay all my lifestyle that I have now. At 25, it would have been like fine. I finally got myself like a little BMW after law school. But now I was like, I'm used to nice stuff.
That's one thing that nobody talks about, right? Is the lifestyle creep. So you make more money, your lifestyle enhances. And then it's like, okay, when you don't have this lifestyle, it's a lot easier to just go take a big risk, because if you lose, you lose, like whatever. But, so you really carved out a niche in catastrophic and TBI specifically. You do a lot of public speaking, particularly the TBI Med Legal Institute. You have your TBI web jams. You spoke at Mardi Gras, the largest ortho related conference, so you had a niche within a niche. So tell me a little bit about that strategy and kind of what drew you to that area of the law.
Yeah, I think it was a couple of things that got me interested in it. But I always had, look, when you're a defense lawyer, you take really deep dives, hopefully, on medical records and experts. And so I had a couple of experiences where, I had to cross-examine. I could think of one in particular. I cross-examined an expert, and he actually had worked for us, our law firm, and he smoked me. in the cross-examination. And he walked out of the courtroom and said something like, sorry, Jeremy, I hope to still hire me at your firm because we were the big boys paying the big bucks. And so, I really just got interested in like, God, how to do this well, and taking deep dives on the medicine. And so, I thought it was just, and then I just met, I think, particularly around, not that I hadn't done some of this before, but I think I met a couple of people in the last 5 years that were kind of life-changing for me. People that were really positive, inspirational, but also like had done really well in this industry. And I think before I thought, well, I don't really need those people, or I don't want to go into that circle because then I have to go to all these conventions and try to meet people. I hate the word networking. So I found some people that were like, you would be good on speaking on this platform because first off, you've done this for a while. You must know something. You see somebody who does it for 5 years. Look, sometimes they know more than I do about things. I never disparage that person, but I got a chance to do it and I was able to shine on it. And then I got asked to do other things. And I started to really concentrate on like, I really want to know more. It's such a cutting edge area, like traumatic brain injury cases. Wow. It's like, so, ortho is too. It's not what it used to be. And the industry's changing like faster than it ever has, right?
Jeremy has become a bona fide expert on TBI, but that doesn't happen overnight. So I asked him how to develop his knowledge of medicine.
I remember speaking at a conference and someone saying to me, or being at a conference and someone saying, Jeremy, we haven't seen you around, because like all these marketers show up for the conference and they know me as somewhat of a personality, but the side they don't know is me grinding also to get really ready for things. And so I remember getting to this conference early and literally like, having a decent enough room to do it, and then having access to a couple of my marketing or, graphics people, et cetera, and finalizing this presentation. And I didn't go out until after it was done. So I just worked like exceptionally hard. And what I thought, Chris, was look at the list of people that are speaking at this thing. If I get up there in front of them, who have spoken more than me, even though I kind of flew under the radar. I flew under the radar for years after I started my own practice because I didn't think it was important to. So if I was doing well, like I couldn't handle the business I had, I didn't need to be out there doing speaking engagements or as much marketing. And you don't know what you know what you know, and you don't know what you don't know. I mean, you think you don't need something. Thought I didn't need it, and now I see how much I need it. How much I still need to learn. So a lot of it was motivated, Chris. I don't know if that answers the question, from wanting to not embarrass myself in front of like some of these names who are some of the best thought of trial lawyers in the country. I'm going to get up on a stage with them and not know the medicine, or they're saying that's wrong. So I would just prepare like I prepare for a trial, where in one of these trials where you think the worst thing's coming. I always think in a trial, I'm always surprised that they don't bring up the one or two things they should, but I'm waiting for that knife in the back. So that's where I come from.
That focus and work ethic's amazing. And I imagine too, after you speak at the event, it's a little bit easier to do the networking. I kind of joked with you before this interview that, I don't do a lot of conferences because I just don't naturally network. Some people have that skill where they can just meet someone and build a rapport. I feel like awkward, like in the chair a little bit.
Yeah. I want to just tell you a quick little story if we have time. So I did a webinar, and I would like to see, we could talk later about how people can get access, but I was given permission to do a webinar on the platform about conferences and how to get the most out of a conference, at this particular conference, but just generally. And I was and so I was glad I was given an opportunity to do that. And a couple people contacted me and I've said things like this before, because I am pretty blunt. I have the East Coast thing going, Boston thing, where I'm a native from. And so, I've softened it a little bit. But, a couple people said it was the most brutally honest thing they'd heard on a web jam. And I talked about, like, I won't go too deep into it, things that people do at conferences, and how when I was transitioning to plaintiff law, I was like treated like a total outsider, and not poor me, but like I would go to these things and everybody had their little private parties. I wasn't getting invited to those things. I walked down the hall, they'd be like, hey, giving each other high fives. No one would say hello to me. I was surprised I didn't know more people, because I thought, well, I was a defense lawyer, but they had their crew and people that referred them cases, and they always hung out there. And so I was like, wow, this is not networking. And they would sit down, and some of these people were like just sitting there, never say hello, but yet the advertisement for the conference would say, "Come and network." No, and I can be an extrovert sometimes when I'm working hard and I don't want, I need my time off from people, but I thought I was like pretty extroverted at these things, and I couldn't do any networking. No one wanted to talk to me.
Jeremy is now firmly established in the conference world. So, as a former outsider who's gotten his foot in the door, what's his advice on breaking into those closed circles?
Yeah, I guess I come from another way. I think my advice to my colleagues is that if you're like a name guy, or you have your clique, or you have your little circle for your dinner, or your guys that you high five with in the casino at Cala, that you like bring somebody else in, bring in that guy that's the defense lawyer. He could be a valuable asset to your firm, and for referrals, say hello to him and get to know who he is. Because the same people see the same people over and over again. It's the same people speaking. It's the same people that at the parties, they see each other everywhere, and that becomes camaraderie. But like, I think the advice to people is, I don't have advice for the ones that are getting mistreated. I think that you need to keep going, and hopefully people like me will be a little kinder and will reach out to you, because now that I have some notoriety in the profession, or whatever you want to call it, I see how I could be a jerk too, because I look like someone who like knows everyone at the convention. I don't want to be that guy.
Yeah, I got to give a shout out to Paul Faust, because I don't go to hardly any conferences, but I just really remember Paul made me incredibly comfortable. The one conference I did, he was like really interested in who I was, and just, yeah. So though yourself and those types of individuals are just incredibly helpful for someone like myself that's introverted or just doesn't make connections as easy. I kind of want to shift over your involvement in the Los Angeles trial lawyers charities. Now you're a board member of the LATLC, and you mentioned it's really changed your life in a different type of way. And I was just wondering if you could kind of speak on that a bit.
Yeah, this might surprise people, because people are always interested in knowing, like, what did you do to build your firm? How did you get these speaking engagements? How did you get onto media? How did you get asked to do these things? And how are you getting like TBI cases, right? That's what that's what everything is. And it's all anybody wants to talk to me about. But, then you think, if you start talking about this, you're going to ask them for money. So what ended up happening was that I went to an event about 6 years ago, and this is to try to simplify it. It was just like, I had this energy that I felt, and it may sound like a little spiritual, but I had this energy. I felt like this is a circle I wanted to be in. And it turned out that those people were, not all of them were. Some of them were people that, didn't try cases, newer lawyers. And then there were like some of the people that sit on the LATLC board with me, or some of the, the biggest trial lawyers in California. And so I met like one gentleman who was an older guy. I was there with my office manager at the time. And I felt like, wow, this is like, it's not like this thing, oh, I'm just going to give back and feel like some guilt that I got to, do that because I've done pretty well. But it was like, wow, I feel like this was the beginning, Chris, in a lot of ways, of me wanting to be part of that circle, like that conference circle, so to speak, even though it wasn't a conference. And I did it at a charity event. It was one of our volunteer events. We do them about 7, 8, 9 times a year, where we what we do is, it's basically the attorneys and the vendors and some other people who give to the LA trial lawyers charities, and then we give directly back way more than the minimum that's rated to be a good charity or 501c3 is given back directly in the community. So, we're trying to make a big dent locally for like victims, homelessness, battered women, children that are disabled. And we did that with our great trike giveaway. And so it's something that has grown. Like, everybody wants to be part of it. Some people don't recognize how important it will be for them, though. It elevated me. So once I got in that circle, I thought, well, maybe I do want to associate with these people. So that's how it changed. LATLC.org.
That's incredible. So, and I like it's that you hear it before, give without expecting anything in return. But when you can actually see the impact, when you're helping these different organizations, homelessness, all the different areas, it's just, it brings it around full circle, like for your life and just how you feel from an emotional type level.
Yeah, and I'll also say that what's interesting is I said this to a couple of the guys when I first got elected to the board. They assigned me the hardest duties, which is to go out, contact vendors mostly, right, and ask them for money. Okay, and this is look. Most of what I do all day, I ask people for money to sell my cases, right, and and for other things. And you know what you're dealing with insurance companies and defense lawyers. You're used to that, like over and over again. It says you're always complaining about it, grinding it, doing the same thing. And it was like, okay, so I got rejections for that, but I was like, this is a kind of a cool rejection because I'm like, what? I know you've made like $1 trillion. You don't want to give $1,000 to put your name up and have a little logo that you give back. Like, fine. I felt a lot better than some adjuster telling me my case was crap, right? It was a different ways to ask for money.
That's great. That's great. And, the other thing I want to talk about is you have a lot of experience with like high profile cases, right? So you were quoted in Fox regarding the Aaron Andrews case that was just very, very public. And I was going to ask, what tips would you give an attorney who finds themselves in a situation where it could have the potential to get media attention? How do you get, quoted in Fox Business? What goes into getting more attention in the media?
Yeah, I think it's less about focusing on that and maybe I will say this, and just to be really blunt, let's not sugarcoat it. When you have one client, like how many cases have I handled? I have a boutique firm, great professional staff, but we're not a mill, right? So we try to handle, mostly high stakes cases, and then we'll do some other stuff that we like. But you're not going to get that many cases with someone famous. I kind of have this weird thing where people think because I'm in LA, I'm Beverly Hills, and I have some social media with some celebrities or close to it that they're like, oh, he's an entertainment lawyer, which I wanted to be years ago. But I have personal injury cases with some celebrities or entertainment folks. And, we have crossed over the years into helping them with some of their litigation. But, we don't put together contracts for agents. Sometimes people will call me, or contracts for movies. But I'll tell you one case with a celebrity. It really, like, everybody cares about this. I know you know this, Chris, but it's like I could have like the most interesting legal case ever, the biggest traumatic brain injury case, a non-celebrity. Everyone wants to hear about the time I represented that celebrity on a fender bender. It does help. I'm not suggesting, you should go out and try to get those. I think some people are really focused on it, but I'm fortunate that I do have like a client base that comes to me from that. And when I get those cases, I remember having a doctor who I sent him some cases, and I saw him at a convention, and he couldn't stop talking to me about this like semi-celebrity I sent him, how excited he was about that. Right. So, I mean, if you can get that, and play it up, it's probably going to help your business. I hate to say it. It's like the Kardashian syndrome.
Right. Those client testimonials. And I was going to ask you kind of a funny question with like your mom or your dad, when they're introducing you to, one of their friends, do they say, here's my son, expert litigator, TBI? Like, how do they make that introduction? Do they throw those curveballs in there of some of the celebrities? Like,
one of the reasons I was interested, I have a couple people in my family that were sort of, they're no big shots, but they were in the entertainment industry. And I really think that it's kind of like that, like, because neither of my parents are like braggart type people. They're just, it's hard for them, and they're pretty humble about it. But, everybody does that with their kids to some degree. So I think it's much easier to entree. It's harder to say, this is what my kid does, and he's, a litigator. He gets really deep into the science and the medicine. It's easier to say, like, he represented this person. And I've had even my mom come to me, or someone say to me, my family, like, I saw your thing about this, and they're not interested in the deep, like, medicine, like the greatest case I ever had at TBI. They're interested, like, I saw that you represented this person, or a picture of you saying, this is my client that won an Oscar or something. And so I don't know if that answers the question, but.
Well, let's talk about this. This is your stage for the PI attorneys listening. Let's talk about one of those big TBI cases. Do you have one that really stands out that was very rewarding from like a personal gratification? Not only that, but maybe also that big result. Is there a case that comes to mind?
Yeah, well, I'm just thinking of one now that we have, for instance. So what I've tried to do is I basically have kind of gone all in on really understanding traumatic brain injury, and we have technology that keeps changing. And so I think I did have a couple cases that kind of like changed my life when I was working even at the Callahan firm. We started doing This is where I realized I wanted to do plaintiff work, is we started doing class action cases on, and I don't really, I focus on single plaintiff cases mostly now, and it's a passion of mine because I like the connection directly with the person, and I really want to help the victim. But one of the cases I worked on that kind of changed my trajectory was as I was coming out of starting my own firm. We were one of the first firms, and I got to lead it, and I was certified as the class counsel on a couple of these wage and hour cases. And I started, and that's like led me into be able to get like bigger TBI cases and things like that, because no one saw me as that person. So we had a settlement in that case of $30 million. And then I started doing like, millions, 5 millions. And I hate to talk about numbers. Like, I don't like numbers where the firms just try to one up each other. And I almost feel like they're being deceitful. But look, it's as exceptions to things. So if I'm going to tell you I settled $1 million case, which is not so big, I'm going to tell you that maybe over the 10 million, because I'm going to tell you the struggle I had in doing it. And what went on that made it so difficult. Because if it's an Uber case and the person had a hematoma and was in the hospital, if you can't sell that for the $1 million policy, you've got a real problem. But I also had some really interesting cases that involve opening up policies, open limit policies, which are, people think are jackpots, but that's why I always try to say the learn, do, teach thing. It's unbelievable. I see a lot with these, there's a few organizations that say, just go on your own, open your own firm. And then I have these lawyers come to me because fortunately, I do have lawyers that come either for co-counseling relationships, and I'll just mentor them because all I have left now is to give back. And so I'd like to be compensated, but I'll take one case and mentor them on 5, because I look at them and I go, look, I don't know a lot of things in life. And I used to think I knew a lot about a little, but I only know like 10 things. And one of them is like, here's how you handle an orthopedic case, and you're not getting value out of it. So to answer your question, I think it was really inspirational for me to take a case from a younger lawyer and be able to add value and get him 10 times the amount of the settlement, because I just knew the stuff. I knew the medicine. Now, do I know about many other things? No. I'd like to say I'm good at tennis and basketball that I love, but I pretty much suck. I'm really good at this, about adding some value to cases that involve medicine that hasn't been looked at.
That's amazing. And I got to imagine those individuals that you're working with, that you're mentoring, my gosh, just to have that, you said review 5 cases to their 1, that's just an incredible value add, especially when they're unsure of how to add value to those types of cases.
Yeah. And look, it's really competitive out there. We're also seeing firms that settle cases really low, mill firms. There's so many things going on in the industry that are so different. I see it in cycles. We're facing potential challenges besides opening up, to non-lawyers and all that, right? At the same time, it's like a double-headed monster coming at us. And so people need the most help they can get. We need to join together. And when I started, there was like kind of every firm, every personal injury firm was like in LA was like the solo guy who didn't have much money. And then there were a few monsters. But the monsters were like the one guy, the name guy, and they had like a relatively small firm and the one big trial lawyer. The business has changed so much because now you have and they're good, they're fine. What's great is like pre-litigation firms. It's great. You know what you know. We didn't have those. Those did not exist in 1997. They didn't really exist in 2007. You had a couple, I won't mention the names, that did billboards, but everyone kind of like took the case as far as they could go. And then maybe they associated it in like a big name if the case was like turned out to be catastrophic, right? Now it's a segment. So what I'm seeing is I'm able to help. There's not that many, comparatively speaking, lawyers that really go in the trenches. And so I don't mind doing it because that's all I know, right? So the pre-lit firms are good for me. I'm here for them. I respect them. They can get cases done quickly. They have to learn how to get cases done at high values. A lot of them, some will sell low, but some of them realize that like we have to develop new skills because we're not going to take them into litigation. And if we do, we're going to have to pay a substantial fee to a litigator like me. So I respect each one, and I don't, right, Chris, the industry's changed and we have all these different types of firms.
With all the saturation in the legal industry, the best way to maximize value is often to niche down. I asked Jeremy how he came to that strategy over his career.
My biggest problem I had was that I was insecure about my ability to maintain my income as I spent a lot of money building out my firm, and I was used to somebody else paying the bills, right? So and it's one thing if you had like a family who could help you with that, or if you had, like you said, if you're younger, you're not used to having income. But I was really worried about how will I maintain my lifestyle and keep up with my bills. And at that time, I thought the way to do it was to like diversify it out, right? To just be doing business lit, entertainment lit, and like have some defense cases. And so it really took me a long time to get into this point where I basically can tell people I really just want to work on traumatic brain injury, catastrophic cases. I'm still interested in spine surgery cases, spine stimulator cases, those things, but I really don't, I don't know. I like to tell when people call for the case, I like to say, I don't know, when they ask me that family law question, right?
Right. What you just said there was, it reminds me of that book Range by David Epstein. So everyone talks about, oh, you got a niche, but you have to have these experiences before you have the opportunity to niche, to be able to see the opportunity.
Oh, so true.
Because they made the example of Nadal, like he played all these different sports before he found out that he had an extreme competency in tennis. But like, what if he niched down at the beginning only into basketball? Like, how good would he have been? Like, who knows? So I like that you had these broader experiences and you saw your niche, your specialty.
Yeah, wow. That was so well put, Chris. I didn't think of it that way. I think that it took me a while, and we go, look, we're cognizant of, you mentioned another thing we should talk about, or that we're talking about, I guess, is that how much the industry changed even in just COVID, right? It seems kind of obvious, but now, like, I'm hiring, if I have to hire a new attorney, right? Which we just got bar results in California. A lot of passers, huge amount of passers. There's a flooding of the legal market. Sorry to my new attorney friends, but I look at my needs are different now, even as a litigator, because I used to need somebody. So if I went to a deposition for 2 hours, I had to drive all the way to West Covina, and now I can do it on Zoom. So I don't have as much, and it goes on and on and on. I used to have, if I was doing a big case where there were multiple parties, I needed to have a staff member, like almost always, to just print the mailings. The mailings were like on a desk, right? For a little firm, a firm that's, growing, it doesn't want to be that big and wants to just take on niche cases. That was like really time consuming and expensive. Now I don't even have to go into the physical mailbox anymore. That's huge for us.
Right. Zoom has just, all these technological advancements have just really accelerated during this time. I even think of things like interviews, right? You doing the in-person interviews, and now you could record them via Zoom or do something like Spark Hire, because after I do, say, 10 interviews, it's like everybody kind of blends together. I'm like, who was that? Which person said that? Right. Even if I take flawless notes, but if, I can go back and watch the recording, I'm good to go.
Right. It's expensive too. I was trying to explain to one of my new associates about, this client says, why haven't you taken that deposition? I have a strategy for it, but it's like, court reporters may be a dying breed, I hate to say, because why can't we just do this electronic, right? We're doing it. It's so crazy. Like, court reporters, and again, I want everybody to have their job, because, we could be obsolete as attorneys. But, it's like, we got to move with the technology. I mean, if we're doing that, like what we learned from Zoom, and not only that, like I was saying, like the ability to you had to mail serve everything. Okay. And like, hey, I couldn't get in my office in Beverly Hills. You know why? Because the National Guard was outside during the riot. So I have a picture of, not only, it wasn't because you couldn't go in because of COVID, and that was a thing too. They would send a message around, hey, there's COVID in the building. And then I tell my people, and they're like, I'm not going in. And I like to have people in the office, unless I feel like that they're really good working outside the office. I'm a little traditional. But I went down the street, I was crossing, Rodeo Drive, and I'm going to my office on Camden, and I literally just shout, I couldn't get in the office. They wouldn't let me in the office. I had to walk around, and there was the National Guard there. So, whoa, does life change?
Such a change. Looking back, it's like, there were some definite positives, like especially in the legal industry, it's like 10, 20 years advanced where the acceleration of what they probably would have experienced. And Jeremy, this has been awesome speaking with you. We covered a lot of amazing topics, from marketing to niching to just hard work and everything. Where can people go to get in touch with you to learn more?
Okay, well, first off, we are rebranding our website as a national website because I have been asked to try cases, and I just got back from Austin, Texas. But really quickly, go to my IG at Tissot, TISSOTESQ. You can also, I'm sure you'll have it up there, email me at jtissot@tissotlaw.com. You will also see me, you'll see me on the TBI platform. If you follow me on IG and Facebook, you'll see my speaking engagements, my trials, my webinars, and I'm talking about a lot of other things that are really important in the industry, albeit such as going to CAOC. Chris, it's been amazing to be here. I really appreciate the time. We have so much more to talk about, but we covered a lot.
Jeremy's got such a unique perspective because he's been all over the business from outsider to the top. And what I find interesting about his journey is that though he's found his niche now, it took a whole lot of exploration. But while he was exploring, he was getting his reps in the courtroom, he was grinding to learn more about the subject area, preparing for a conference like he would prepare for a trial, and now that he's successful, he's reaching out to others through his mentorship and his charity work. So for young lawyers out there, find a situation where you can get trial experience at a subject that you can really sink your teeth into. And for the more established crowd, open your circle, offer a hand to the outsider. It could be great for your business. I'd like to thank Jeremy Tissot of Tissot Law Firm for sharing his story with us, and I hope you gained some valuable insights from the conversation. You've been listening to Personal Injury Mastermind. I'm Chris Stryer. If you liked this episode, please leave us a review. We'd love to hear from our listeners. I'll catch you on next week's PIM with another incredible guest and all the strategies you need to master personal injury marketing.